chick, chick. Here, chick, chick, chick. Matter of fact, I may just cast out a little bit of feed on the ground by the door and see if we can get them to move this way, because they're having a great deal of trouble. They were on the nesting. Here, chicks. Here, chick, chick, chick. And if I can get them to come over here and eat this food. The rooster wants them to come with him, and the problem is so we're just gonna put some food right there, and maybe they'll figure that whole process out. Yeah, looks like we got one more coming out, and we'll just kind of hang out this way. They tend to follow me as well, which is kind of weird, and I've noticed that the only places they actually typically go on the yard is where they see me at. So looks like I got them close to the door. So there we go, one's out, and if I can get Lucy, who's always a straggler, she's our Rhode Island red hen, and she's always the straggler. So all right, there we go, guys. Everybody's together now. You guys take off with the General Solomon, and let's just see if see what we can get going on here today. But all right, so that's good. They've been kind of worrying themselves for several minutes. I watched them outside as I was getting ready to come out, and they were, of course, the one hen's still kind of pecking around, but unless she gets lost in the pen again, we should be okay. Of course, she's also the one, I think, that's been a bit broody here lately, or maybe showing signs that she's getting broody. So she doesn't really like to be with the flock most of the time. And when she gets ready to lay, she's trying to get away from everybody. But anyway, so that's that. So it looks like they'll figure this out. I'm gonna keep feeding them close to that door, and that way they'll get used to that spot, and they can come in and out much better. As you can see, the new Roosters came along pretty well for them. I'm gonna look at the chicks this morning. So look at they are coming along. They're really a lot bigger than they were a week ago. It's amazing how fast they grow, and they're hungry. So here in a minute, I'm gonna go ahead and refill their food bowls. Yeah, there you go. Good morning to everybody. So we got that. We'll come back and do that later. Check their water and everything, but they're okay there. We got the electric fence, and what I've done with this whole system here, and I'll just show you what I've got. We had several issues with, and they still want to come. They've been so used to coming out the door and making their way across the yard that their first instinct is to move down into the coop, and they're not picking up on the going to the side there. They'll eventually get it. May have to work with them until they get it, but we'll help them figure it out. But what we got here is that this is kind of the process of several encounters, I guess you could say, with predators. The first thing we had a couple of years ago when we first tried is, we built our coop, and we basically just put the fence post up, 4 fence posts around the initial square you see back there, and then we just covered the outside with some chicken wire to keep them in and turn them loose. Well, the first thing that happened was the dog got under the wire, and unfortunately our wire only served to keep our chickens in so that the dog could kill the chickens without them being able to escape. So that it really didn't serve the chickens any protection. So the next thing we did was we did that the first year. It came back, and then we did chickens again the second year, and we had a very similar problem. The dogs got under the end of the wire, and before we could stop them, and they had already killed about 2 or 3 of our 10 birds we bought. So we skirted around, and that's where I'm getting to. We skirted around the bottom. So basically we come down, can't see it really good on the phone, except you can see it kind of on the ground. We come about half down and about 2 foot out around the bottom of this run. So that was enough to keep the dogs from from getting under, because their instinct is. And the other thing, and I'm going to do that today, is I put little wood runners, as you can see around there, and that kind of bring there at the dog's attention. If they're even trying to dig under, they'll go to that corner and they'll dig right at the corner. They don't ever think to come back and dig under that netting, that wire, and they just give up after a time. It was amazing how much that they would pull on that wire, but they couldn't break the wire. They couldn't pull it up, and they couldn't get under it. So that stopped dog attacks. So the next phase of our predatory encounters was hawks, and we had about probably maybe a good week or two. Everything was going well, and then I would count, and we had 7 birds, and then one day I just got 6, and I mean, I can't see anywhere where the birds gone. Just that day the bird just disappeared. That happened. The next day I came back. Went to 6 to 5, and something was up, and so we ended up with a well, I'm sorry, no, sorry, that was the second. The next one was I would leave the run. If you see this chicken coop here, this little one here, I've got a door over the front that I'll be able to open and let them in and out maybe in a couple of weeks. But what I did in the original one is I left it open at night. And so a rat actually had been eating their chicken food that was under the coop, and then eventually found its way in there, and he killed a bird or so, maybe a couple before and you know, rats don't really eat the chicken. They'll just, and it's disgusting, but they eat the chicken's head off, and they'll drink the blood from the chicken. Just total waste of the bird. But so we started closing that up at night. We closed this one up at night and removing that run, so they were up pretty high off the ground. The rat couldn't get to them, so that was pretty safe. So now we're about we're about to about 5-6 birds at this point. Then we lost a couple to dogs. We lost maybe a few to the rats. Yeah, about 6 birds. That's when I start noticing the day-to-day. That was probably week 2 or 3 after we had set them out. After they begin to move out, they're about 4 weeks old at that point. So phase 3, a big red-tailed hawk started coming and setting on. If you look what these posts, and at the time, right here, this post right here, he would just sit there, and I didn't see him the first couple times, but I watched after I was just losing about a bird a day, and he was just about 8 or 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, come sit there, and it was just like a buffet for him. They were just in the pen, they couldn't get away. He just picked the one he wants. He goes down to eat. So that's when we went with the deer. Well, originally I don't know if you see the deer netting through the chicken wire. Originally I used chicken wire. It's really heavy and it kind of sagged. Looked really bad. And for what we needed, this deer netting is perfect. It's really lightweight. You can stretch it tight. Hawks can't get in and out. We lost a few more to a hawk, and we lost one to an owl. It got them late at night. And the owl, before we did the wire here, we actually ran fishing line. It seemed to discourage the hawk, but the owl was a little bit braver and went in there and got the bird and tried to get him out and couldn't get him out and dropped him. But typical signs, predatory signs of an owl. So we ended up losing that. So basically that, in the final stage, we actually and this was between the skirting and the dog. In other words, the skirting had helped eliminate the dogs, or to discourage them at least. But they were working so hard to try to get into the pen that we just run a strand of electric wire. We were able to get the electric fence relatively cheaply. They just run a couple strands around the base of it, and not just dogs, but that worst of all predators, the raccoon, should be discouraged to a great deal from messing around too much. So with all those things together, the overhead covering, the wire, the fence, we were finally able last year to get our hens to make it to about 7 or 8. Well, I'm sorry, they're probably 5 or 6 months old. And we had the 4, and they were doing good, and we felt pretty confident. We'd made it several months with no issues, and obviously they're still alive a year later. And that's when we decided to get Solomon the rooster. We looked everywhere to get a rooster. It's amazingly hard to find a rooster anywhere during the summer. Most people that have roosters, they're keeping them. A lot of people will kill the roosters early because they don't want roosters. We finally found one guy who had a couple of black and copper Morans. I think it's Morans. Maybe it's not. It's hard to tell. But I think black and copper Moran. So we got him. He's a really pretty rooster. You can see him kind of there. He's well, you can't see him that well. Let's see if I can see him. Yeah, he's put some white in his tail feathers over the winter. But he's got copper green. They're eating some biscuits I tossed out this morning. But a beautiful rooster. So we added him to the situation here, and about 4 or 5 months in, and then finally, about 7 months, almost 7 months to the day, I finally found the first green little egg in our nesting boxes, and we were super excited because we felt like that we had actually succeeded in our goal of raising chickens for eggs, because that's what we wanted to do. And I got the rooster, and I'll add this. I got the rooster, and I'll put this back on him, give him some spotlight. I got him because we just wanted a rooster. We just felt kind of, pardon the pun, cocky, because we had been successful at raising these hens now, and we got them kind of what we broke the predator code, and so we got him. But it was really fortunate, and the reason why is this: he's a super good yard manager. He's a little bit cantankerous with the kids. Not all the times, but every now and then he just gets kind of moody and he'll run them down. We've learned to just kind of manage him. You pick up a stick or something and just kind of point at him a little bit, and he backs off and moves away. But he's a super great manager. He keeps the girls safe. He keeps them where they need to be at. He allows them to eat and forage for food without having to be so concerned for predators, which they are absolutely oblivious to predators. So he's been a great asset there. And I will add this, and then kind of bring this little bit of update to a close, and kind of bring you up to speed on what we've done. The whole, what I'm doing right now, you notice I've got this pen built, coop or run, however you want to call it. And then I've got my chickens in the yard, and you may be saying, well, why are you doing that? Well, I kept those chickens pinned up, and we protected them. We called that, laughingly called that first part Chicken Fort Knox. But I kept them pinned up to probably about January of this year. And in January, I made a water feeder, a waterer here from a recycled plastic jug in the bottom of a bucket. So that's kind of an automatic water. Holds about 3 gallons. Last the 4 of them about most of a week, maybe 5-6 days before I have to refill it. But at any rate, I usually would fill it I'll take it to the water hose by the house, fill it up. Well, on that day, the door usually closes itself. I had to prop it open if you don't see the rock at the bottom. But on that day, for some reason, one of the hens was brave enough to run into the door. And when I looked around, all my precious chickens were out on the yard. All of my hens were out scratching, and they were having a massive, great time. It was like Christmas. It was amazing. And so, but I was freaking out because we had worked so hard. We're 2 years in. We finally got chickens laying eggs, and I'm afraid of everything. Predators are, in my imagination at that time, are everywhere. So I'm like, how do I get these guys back to safety? Well, they scratch. I tried to tempt them in at first with a handful of feed. They were having none of it. They'd rather have the bugs and slugs than that chicken feed. But maybe after about a good hour, we just sat and watched them, and they kind of went around the local area of the coop. And then about an hour or so, I was able to take a cup of food, throw it in there, and they all went in, and they went in to get some water, and we shut the door. And I kind of thought about it, and I kind of like what happened, and I was able to get them in with the feed once they kind of got hungry and thirsty. And so little by little, I'd let them out for about an hour or so every day, just get some exercise, get out of that coop. And little by little, I got more and more confident with their ability to manage. Even like right now, I'm looking. I don't know. You probably can't see it, but right there's a big hawk that just flew over, and we haven't so far had any problem with that. Even though there's been hawks in the area, Solomon's been really good. So, make a long story short, we just kind of progressed into allowing them to go out. At first, I watched them, make sure they weren't being harmed, and then I got them back in. Then I felt confident enough to go in and do other things while they were out, and then I felt confident in leaving them out while I was in the house or outside or other things. And eventually, we got to where we were in pretty much a routine now of letting them out about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. They go out free range for several hours. We put them back in at night with a cup of food so that they can eat and kind of get their stuff ready. And they kind of like that routine because about 6 o'clock they'll get back on that those perches back there that I kind of built for them, and they'll clean themselves, and they'll kind of roost up there for a little while. They eat, they get ready for bed, and they'll file like churchmen into that coop, and then it's good. So it's worked out really well. So that system's working well. So eventually this second part here will follow the same pattern. Eventually I got to close this part off and separate these two coops temporarily. But eventually they will be out in the run, and they will do that until they start getting old enough to interact with the other birds. And then I will, as they free range a little bit, I will manage the situation and watch it, because I think the problems we had earlier with birds and hawks was the hawks tend to like younger birds. So we'll follow that. Eventually we'll have, right now we have a total, if everybody stays healthy and survives, we will have 20 hens or roosters. We're not sure exactly all what we have yet, but they'll be out, and should have anywhere from 60 to 70 eggs a week. That's a lot of eggs, so we'll have eggs to give away, maybe sell, help pay for some of the chicken feed, which will close up this cycle, this system. So basically what I'll have here is, if I can sell eggs to pay for their feed, their supplemental feed, and I have them free range, and they have about a total of about 4 or 5 good acres with wooded area in the back there, brush to get up under. They have you see the yards here. All this is family property, so it all belongs to us. So they have all this to roam and scratch and look for food and whatnot. And so with that and the supplemental feed, especially if they can, there's my daughter trying to hide and get out of the video, but if they can get a lot of their feed, maybe 45% of their feed off the yard, and I can have enough eggs to buy the rest of it, it would be I consider that a closed system, in the fact that they're doing all the work for us. Other than me having to go buy the feed or sell the eggs, they're doing pretty much everything else. So that will close our system. And just wanted to kind of catch you up, and this is what we're doing here. I've been very, and I'll turn this around, but I've been very blessed to be able to have a family property that I was able to purchase and buy relatively cheap. Of course, what we have that we're beginning to work with is a double wide mobile home. We have, that belongs to us, about 1/2 acre, but our family together has about 4 or 5 acres here. But this little 1/2 acre, it's a little over 1/2 acre. What we're looking for is to try to create self-sustaining systems. And so, but we've been able to get this mobile home. It's paid for, we own it, so we're modifying it and we're working it. We're making improvements there. We're debt free, and we have this small piece of land that we're developing. I can show you some of the other. I'm gonna walk here since we're doing. And all right, I've been cleaning. A lot of this was just all brush and briars, whatever, but we've been cleaning this back here up to get this ready to be used for other purposes. But our idea is to just take this land, and if you look right here, you see all this. We've been cleaning and working on that. Burned a little bit back there to clean some of that off, and it goes back into the woods a bit here. So you have a good bit of land here, but the idea is to is to create systems that are what I call self-enclosed or completed circuits, or that's the way I like to think about them. In other words, nature is just being nature, and all we really have to kind of do is manage it a bit, kind of direct it, rather than. And I think that's a problem that we have in our modern culture. And this group is Christian minimalism. And if you made it through my very long stretch of talking, and get to this point, our purpose and point. And here's my daughter. I'm gonna put you on live. We're on live Facebook Live, so if you don't want to be on live video, she's okay. She's like whatever. But what I was saying, I'll say this and I'll wrap this up, and maybe I'll touch bases with this a bit. But what we're just trying to create is some closed systems, rather than manipulating nature, rather than trying to force nature into something. We're just directing it. And I think that's what we're supposed to do in life, is we're supposed to take the things that God gives us and use them in a good way, rather than manipulate them and try to use them in a, what I would use, if I could use the term, perverse way. And I mean that, in other words, that we're forcing things against its nature, rather than working with the nature of things. So that's what we're trying to do here. And over time, we hope to transform this into something beautiful, something productive, and something fun. A good place to raise a family and to worship God and to practice our faith in God. But that's what we're doing. I just thought I'd kind of catch you up on this and connect this. I do some of this on my Facebook page, but I realized I have this group and people are connected here, so I wanted to use this to share. And I may, in a little while, I may come back and do some and just talk about my philosophy of this. But I just wanted to catch you up on the chicken coops. Yes, my daughter. Say hey. She's saying hey. All right. Well, we'll finish up for now. Got some projects to finish up this morning. Just wanted to talk to everybody. We'll holler at you guys later. Have a great day.